gonna give you a seat back. I ain't gonna do you like that.
I don't care.
We just switch places. Yeah, man, parking is 6 o'clock. You can't park until 6 o'clock. So I don't understand, you know what I'm saying? Fine. Oh, all right. I'm about to say. Oh, I know. Excuse me. What? No, don't stop, right? You're not eating? Oh. Mr. Songer, how you doing? What'd you do with my paperwork?
You used it, man.
You used it. You never got in touch with me. How did you use it?
We considered it.
It's like shooting ducks in a barrel. Hey, remember McFadden? On that paperwork I gave you? Watch how he look when he see me. Come on, sit over here, Mr. McFadden. Sit right next to me. Come on, sit over here. He got room. He'll move. All right. No, that's why I want you right next to me. Yeah.
How you doing?
All right.
What about you? All right.
How you doing?
Have a little fun tonight.
Oh, fun? Oh, no, we just like shooting ducks in the barrel. I got all y'all in the same room. I just showed them my paperwork. Know what I'm getting ready to do. Yeah, that's exactly how it's gonna go.
Better call Mako.
What they gotta tell me to know, right?
Thanks, Shorty.
Mic check. It worked. I just checking the mics for him, that's all. Who? He was checking the mic. I was doing him a favor. Cheatham up here. What's up, Doc?
An unedited version of the comments you provide to us is provided to the Department of Justice, but also so that we, as a member of the advocacy community, can have a record as well as we continue to work with you on some of the changes that we would like to see here in Baltimore around public safety. So in order to do this, we need your permission to record you. So there are forms on your chair, there are consent forms that we would like each of you to sign. If you do not want to be recorded, there is a section in the auditorium in the back. There are signs on chairs that say no recording area. Feel free to sit in those areas, and we have asked the media, our friends with the media, to honor those no record sections. If you do not want to share public comments, we also have comment forms in your chair. You can write whatever comments you want to provide to us and hand them, leave them on the desk as you leave this afternoon, and we will make sure that that's added to the record. So with that, Michael?
So good evening, everyone. Okay, I'm Michael Pennard again. I'm faculty here at the law school. Welcome, welcome. We're so happy to have you here tonight. Two other housekeeping, well, actually one other housekeeping matter and then an honor, for me at least. Congressman Cummings will be here around 6:30, just so you know, and then he'll provide some remarks, and then we'll get into your remarks and your comments and your thoughts. But now, I want to introduce the MC for the evening. Her name is Yvette Papeau. She's an amazing, incredible third-year law student here. She's a leader inside these walls as well as outside these walls, who's very dedicated and committed to the issues that we'll be talking about tonight. So, Yvette.
So good evening. As he said, my name is Yvette Papeau. I am a third-year law student here at Maryland. He took all of my biography, so I don't have anything else to say. I would like to welcome you guys to the Maryland Carey School of Law for this very, very important topic. And we will have a few speakers before we get started on the community discussion. We have Dean Donald Tobin, who is the Dean of the Law School. He is also a professor of law here at Carey Law, who will give the welcome. And then we will have Sherilyn Eiffel. Sherilyn Eiffel is the president and director counsel of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, the groundbreaking civil rights law firm founded by Baltimore's own Thurgood Marshall. She has deep ties to Baltimore, including teaching here at Carey Law for over 20 years, and she will be joined by Congressman Elijah Cummings shortly to discuss the purpose of this meeting and how important it is to the work. And then we will have Sanja Son, who is an actress best known for her role in HBO's The Wire. She's the founder and CEO of Rewired for Change, a nonprofit organization aimed at empowering at-risk youth, families, and communities in underserved areas, and will discuss her work and opportunities for change. So if Dean Tobin is here, can I please have him here to give the welcome?
Thank you, Yvette, and thank you so much for all of you for coming this evening. Like many of you, I have read the DOJ report, and it describes a situation in our city that is both horrific and unacceptable. For too long, too many people have not been heard or valued on these issues, as well as many others. But today is not a day for me to talk. Today is a day for me and for all of us to listen. It is a chance for you to tell your story, for you to have a chance to express your frustration, your ideas, your hopes, your dreams, and your suggestions for a better Baltimore. And for that reason, what I really want to do in opening this up is just to thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for coming. Thank you for helping to provide comments and suggestions that will make our great city better. I also want to thank Congressman Elijah Cummings for co-sponsoring tonight's town hall. I understand the congressman has a vote tonight, so he's going to be on his way, but we so value his participation. Many of you in this room are proud to call him your congressman, but I'm equally proud to call him an alumni of the University of Maryland Carey School of Law. It is no surprise that Congressman Cummings is co-sponsoring this event tonight. What I have seen time and time again is his deep commitment to the people he serves. In addition, however, he cares. He cares passionately about people. He cares passionately about what is happening in our city, and he wants to know how we can make things better. I also want to thank Sherilyn Eiffel and her colleagues at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, the Legal Defense and Education Fund, for everything they've done to make tonight's event possible. Like Congressman Cummings, Professor Eiffel, as I like to call her, has strong connections with Maryland Carey Law. She is a longtime member of our faculty, and she now leads one of the most effective civil rights organizations in the country. She's an amazing resource for us all, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. I want to thank Sanja Son, who after tonight might think about enrolling in our part-time law program. If you notice, Congressman Cummings, Sherilyn Eiffel, Monique was our grad, right? This is a great place for you to come and study. she has used her art to support individuals, families, and communities in Baltimore in so many ways through her organization, Rewired for Change. I'd also like to thank Tim Igott of the Civil Rights Division at the Department of Justice. He will give a brief summary of its report on Baltimore policing and is here tonight with members of his staff to listen to you and answer your questions. And I want to thank Professor Michael Pinard. He has a long career in criminal justice reform and is co-director of our legal clinic and worked with the Legal Defense Fund to organize this session today. He passionately wanted this event to occur so people in our community would have a chance to be heard. Finally, I want to thank all the people here at the law school who worked tirelessly to set up this event, coordinate the activities, and help make sure that this was possible. Again, I want to thank you, each and every one of you, for being here tonight to share your thoughts and to listen to your neighbors. I teach tonight, and actually right now, in our taxpayer clinic where we represent members of the community with tax problems. So I'm going to leave from here, finish my class, and come back to be able to hear you a little later today. But I wanted to make sure that I was here to be able to say to you, thank you so much for coming, and we are so looking forward to hearing from everyone tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dean Tobin. Thank you, Professor Pinard, and everyone who helped organize this evening, but especially to the staff at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, including Monique Dixon, who heads our policing reform campaign, and Carmen Dixon, who you'll meet later on this evening, and other members of our staff who are here tonight. I did teach at University of Maryland Law School for 20 years, and in my first year of teaching, Monique Dixon was my student in 1994. So to be able to hire her on the staff of the Legal Defense Fund and have her be our Deputy Director of Policy and lead this critical policing reform work is a point of pride and for me, and really why I entered teaching, so that I could pay it forward and create a new generation of civil rights lawyers. I really want to talk about the purpose of tonight and the moment that we're in, because this is a difficult time in Baltimore City. We are in an incredibly powerful, transformative moment. It was set in motion by the death of Freddie Gray and the reaction of the community to his death in police custody. It was the people of Baltimore who expressed their outrage, who said enough is enough, who said no more. You might not have liked how people did it, but if you read the report that was published by the Department of Justice just a few weeks ago that revealed what so many of us in this room have known for a long time, but maybe didn't even fully know in the way that we now see it, about the difficulties, the challenges, the brutality involved in policing in Baltimore, you can now perhaps begin to understand the outrage. We all know that Freddie Gray was not the first. We know that there was Tyrone West. We know that there was Anthony Anderson and so many before him. And for those of us who have been in this city for decades, we have known and we have spoken about this problem. If there's a shame in this report, the shame is that this all happened pretty much in public view. These were events, these were encounters that people talked about. These were encounters that people reported. Many of them were encounters that people talked to the media about. And so this is a moment of soul searching in this city when every person and every institution in this city has to take account of their responsibility for this moment of transformation. Now here's the truth. Many of you, I'm sure, feel cynical. You feel angry, you feel frustrated, you feel like, what's the point of this? And I can understand that, and I think if you read that report, anybody can understand it. But the truth is, we do have an opportunity. And if the life of Freddie Gray and Anthony Anderson and Tyrone West means something to you, then we simply cannot allow our anger, our frustration, our cynicism to overpower the critical importance of our engagement with this moment. So what is the moment? Here's what's going to happen. The Department of Justice engaged in their pattern and practice investigation. They published their report. If you haven't read the report, you must read the report. Why? Because I've read a few of these, and this is pretty much the worst I've ever read. It leaves no part of the Baltimore Police Department unspared, from supervisors to command structure to beat cops to the disciplinary code and enforcement. All of those things are laid bare and come under intense criticism from the Department of Justice. And so what that means is that we're not just talking about tinkering around the edges of policing. We're talking about true transformation. Now, the only question on the table is how deep that transformation will go, whether you will have a voice in that transformation, and whether you are willing to consistently engage in the process over the next few years to ensure that that transformation happens. And I feel the need to say this, although we're here tonight, and I've said we're in a moment, I'm using that as a metaphor, I guess, because it's not really a moment. To transform a police department and a public safety system this broken is going to require our engagement for years. This is about our investment in the future, the lives of our children and our grandchildren, and the future of our city. We're talking about transforming a culture. We're talking about the exciting proposition, challenging though it may be, of creating a new vision of what public safety can look like in Baltimore. And we're at that moment because that report has told us that almost everything that has been happening has not worked. So what that means is that the worst part of the report is also the best part of the report. The challenge is also the opportunity. And the question is whether or not we're willing to suspend our disbelief just one more time to take advantage of this opportunity, to say, as Congressman Cummings has said, to seize this moment. I'm not even originally from Baltimore. I moved to Baltimore in 1993 and fell in love with this city and raised my children here. And even though I don't live here now, I still remain committed to this city. And that's why we expend so many of our resources here and why we thought it was important to pull together this forum tonight. Representatives from the Department of Justice are here and they are listening. And we're here. We're here to ensure that they listen. We're here to ensure that even after tonight, we're continuing to engage in the process to ensure that that consent decree, that judgment that is signed by the city and signed by the Department of Justice and monitored by a federal judge is the best it can possibly be for transforming policing in Baltimore City. And we don't want to do that without knowing that you've had your opportunity to engage. Not just tonight, but you can send those public comment cards to us, and most importantly, stay involved with your local organizations so that you can continue to monitor this process. Last thing I'll say is, it's housekeeping, but I have to say it. We are a separate organization from the NAACP. So don't call the NAACP and ask for Monique Dixon or ask for me. We've been separate since 1957. We take it as a point of pride that we were created by a son of Baltimore, Thurgood Marshall. And we walk in the tradition that he created, a tradition of excellence, of black intellectual excellence, of uncompromising belief in racial justice and equality, of marshaling all our resources on behalf of those who are most marginalized and whose voice is unheard, and putting our clients first. And so tonight is really about you. That's why I'm not going to sit up here. It's really about you. I hope that tonight you will share not just your experiences, but that you'll share your vision for what you think public safety should look like in Baltimore. That means when you walk out of your house and you see a police officer, what do you want that encounter to be like? When you get pulled over, what do you expect to have happen? When you go to the police station to report an incident, how do you expect that encounter to unfold? What do you expect to happen after you've been the victim of a crime? How do you expect officers to behave when they walk through or drive through your neighborhood? How do you expect officers to behave in your schools? Because as you know, this report revealed what we, the LDF, has really been pressing is the need to look at school police and their role. So you have an opportunity to begin to think about what is it you want, not just what is it you don't want, and to speak that truth tonight. I thank you all for coming. I thank all of our co-sponsors. I thank this institution, the University of Maryland Law School, which has stayed on the wall on this issue, beginning with their launching of that innovative course, Freddie Gray's Baltimore, that I had the privilege of also teaching in, along with many of the professors at University of Maryland, to begin to drill down and talk about the truth of what really happens in this city. So I thank you all for coming tonight. I look forward to hearing from you. And this is not a one-off. We will continue to be engaged with you as much as you want to be engaged with us. All you have to do is just reach out. Thanks so much. And I think we're ready at this moment to hear from someone who is always an uncompromising voice for truth in this city, and who hopefully is coming back from a vote. I'm hoping that Congress has done some work. He's tried to get them to do some work, but he is such a giant and such a true representative of the spirit of Baltimore, and a great leader, our Congressman Elijah Cummings.
Thank you, Press. Good evening. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Come on, we can do better than that. Good evening, everyone. It's good to be here. I just wanted to take a moment to thank all of you for being a part of this. The University of Maryland, Francis Carey School of Law, the Black Law Students Association, the Journal of Race, Religion, Gender, and Class, the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund, Dr. Donald Tobin. I want to thank you, Doc, for doing this, Dean, for making this happen, Sheldon Eiffel and Sonia Sohn, and everybody else that has anything to do with this. Several months ago, I, along with some other members of our federal delegation, requested that the Department of Justice conduct a pattern of practice investigation of our police department. It was not an easy decision because most jurisdictions want to believe that they can fix their own problems. But we realize that in order to address a number of the issues that so many of us see every day, like I see on Madison Avenue in the inner city of Baltimore, where I've lived for 35 years, that there needed to be a deep dive. Police had to have an opportunity to say in a confidential setting some of the things that some of the officers have said to me. They said there are police officers, they would tell me confidentially, there are police officers that we know shouldn't be on the force. They would say that there are systems that are not lending themselves to good community policing. They would say there are bad apples. They didn't say a few, they just said that they were bad apples. So how do you get to that? You get to it by bringing in the Department of Justice so that they can look at reports, look at data, talk to police, talk to community members, talk to religious leaders, talk to all of those that may feel that they have something to say, gather that information, come back with a report and recommendations. And that is what happened. But ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. On the way in here, one of the reporters said, "How do you know this is going to work?" I don't know that it's going to work, McFadden. But I know one thing. We don't have a choice. We have to go in this direction and make the best of this situation. In other words, there was much protest after Freddie Gray's tragic death. But let me tell you something. It is my hope that we will take that protest and change policy, systems, culture, and practices of our police department. You know, people joke with me, and when I tell them that I often quote Beyonce, and Beyonce has a song that's entitled "Pretty Hurts," and there's some words in that song that I think about all the time. It says, it's the soul that needs the surgery. It's the soul of the department, the police department, that needs the surgery. And on my way here, I had an opportunity to briefly talk to Commissioner Davis, and one of the things I was telling him is that having practiced criminal law for many years, and any criminal lawyer will tell you this, it is impossible to solve crimes without the cooperation of the public. In other words, in order for the police to do their job, they need the police. In order for you to get a jury to convict, in order for you to get witnesses to come forth, there has to be a sense of community and cooperation. So the police need the community, but guess what? The community also needs the police. Your house is broken into, or something tragic happens to you and you call and you don't get an answer, that's a problem. And so I'm hoping that this moment that we have, and by the way, this is not about me. This is bigger than me. This is about generations yet unborn. I don't want my children's children to have to fight the same fights and have to have the same talks that my father had to have with me. I don't want black men and black boys and black women to fear getting into a car, walking down the street, standing on a corner with their girlfriend just trying to get to the bus to get downtown, to go to the inner harbor to have a nice day, only to be stopped, have their pants pulled down and searched, and then drive away, the police drive away and say, have a nice day. That day must be over. And so, as I conclude, let me say this. I'm begging you to work with this process. This is the only one we got. And we must take this critical moment in this city's history, this critical moment in the history of our police department, and we must take this moment and turn it into a movement. And it can be done. We must look at best practices where other police departments have gone through similar problems. There have been at least 15 of these types of investigations. There's some departments that are doing well. Cincinnati and some others are doing much better than they were doing before. And so now we march forward. And so I look forward to listening. And again, I want to thank every single person that's here. And you know what that really pleases me tremendously is when I look out in this audience and I see the diversity that's in this room. Because I've said it over and over again, this is not just a black problem. All of us should want our neighbors and our employees, want our friends and our relatives, not to have to go through what we have seen in that report. There's one thing that just showing this, something that just jumps out at me. I was talking to one of the police officers the other day, and I said, you mean to tell me there were 300 reported stops in a 4 or 5 year period and no citation, no arrest, no charges? And he said something to me that really gave me chills. He said, that's reported. He said it was probably more like about 1.5 million. And so we do have work to do. Now, There are people that say, what y'all going to do tonight is bash the police. It's not about bashing the police. I don't want us to reach common ground. We must move to higher ground. And by the way, I have a message for the business community. The business community has to stand up and demand that we have a fair police department. The business community too. And so, I thank all of you for being here. And Sean, you next? You coming back? All right. Thank you very much for being here. Look forward to hearing you.
Good evening, Baltimore. Good evening, Baltimore. That's right. See, where I come from, I need a little warm up. And I know when I get in spaces where there's the federal government and there's congressmen and you know, there's folks that somewhere subconsciously I might feel are more educated or more, you know, in some other realm. I need to warm up. And so I want you to warm up. I said, good evening, Baltimore. Who got the power? We got the power. I said, who got the power? That ain't good enough. Shorty, I know you're going to give it to me. All right. Listen, I tried to avoid speaking because I have so many feelings, so much emotion, and I've just been feeling some kind of way for a long time. And black folks, we as a people have been feeling some kind of way for a long time. And the climate out here right now is we just been letting them feelings out. And sometimes I think our message gets lost in the feelings. So I went back to my hotel room an hour ago and I had to write everything out on this little notepad because I need to stay grounded in a message. I have been on the streets of Baltimore. I know the pain and the despair and the lack of trust felt by the people of this city. I have made the acquaintance of officers within the BPD who have felt frustrated and confused and pained by the commands and directives handed down to them by the leadership of this city that have contributed to the destruction of their reputations and compromised their ability to do their jobs effectively and respectfully. The DOJ report is a scathing assessment of the patterns and practices of the Baltimore Police Department. To the people, this is no surprise. There is diversity in this room, and I want to congratulate us on making that little step towards diversity, but what is missing? Who is missing? The people who are missing in this room are those who look like the victims that are outlined in 163 pages. There are not enough of them in this room. And because there are not enough of this in this room, that should tell you something, that hopelessness and that despair still exists. We will do ourselves a great disservice if we do not recognize that all of these behaviors, that these issues are all deeply rooted in a culture and mindset of unconscious implicit racism, which must be extricated from the minds of the individuals who have sworn to protect and serve the people of Baltimore. See, we live in a country where we've all been indoctrinated on some level, and we have to just be honest with ourselves that we've all been affected. You have to first admit that, even if you're in this room, because sometimes our liberals and progressives are the folks who are most blind to their own implicit bias. We really need to get to the bottom of that, and we really need to root that out. See, I know what it took for me to get to where I am today, and I know that I have to make a conscious effort every day, every moment, every minute, every day that I'm walking down the street to undo that little neural pathway that my brain wants to take me down. And that's a hard job because you have to have the willingness. Only an honest assessment of the way racism has affected every aspect of policing, from hiring to disciplining and training, will allow us to begin to move forward. There are other systemic ills and deeper political motivations that have also led to the integrity of the police department in Baltimore being compromised. A respect for the citizens of this city must first be shown if we are to rebuild trust between police and community members. And that should start with the assigned monitor being accountable to who? That's right, to the people of Baltimore. Not just the DOJ, not the BPD, and not just the city leadership. The DOJ in this consent decree is not the salvation of this city. You are. And you must continue to push and demand that your voice and participation become a part of this process, and the disciplining of BPD officers and the prosecution of political officials who willingly and knowingly deny you of your civil rights. A voice is not enough. This consent decree is not enough. This will prove to be a farce of the highest order if the people are not allowed to have ongoing, meaningful, and substantive participation in the execution and oversight of the items that end up in this consent decree. Now listen, one of the reasons why I didn't want to speak is because, yeah, there's a part of me that's cynical. There's a part of me that believes that all the institutions and the systems and structures that we live under are an illusion. And there's a part of me that knows that is true. But there's a part of me that grew up in an underserved community that was facing tremendous challenges to the success that I now live. And it was because I believed in miracles that I stand before you today. I have to have some level of faith in the police department's ability to redeem themselves and this city's leadership to make a turnaround. Because I too have made mistakes. I have destroyed lives. And I have a story of redemption that has led me to the light. And because I believe in a God, I have to believe that redemption can come to this city. So that is why I stand here. And I'm asking you to move beyond your cynicism. I'm asking you to move beyond your disbelief, though you are justified in that disbelief. I am asking you to participate fully. In the words of Dave, I love from Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle, the real work is not the sexy stuff. It's not the protesting. It's not the being in front of the cameras. It's the marching your tail down to Annapolis. It's marching your tail up into your legislator's office. It's being at those city council meetings. It's taking friends or dinner with the boys to actually go show up and do this work because nobody pays you. See, these other folks get paid. We need you every day, every minute, every second to be on this job. We want the transformation to come. If we want a new world order, if we want a new vision to show itself and to materialize on this plane, on this earth, it is up to us to make sure it happens. Because they are limited in their power. That's all I got to say. I want to hear your voices. I want to hear them loud when the time comes. Don't be nervous. Say what you got to say. The time is now. If this is going to be a historic moment, moment, it will be because you participated, not because you spoke up, because you participated. Be in this to win this. Who's next?
Me. Thank you, Sonia. So let's give him a hand one more time, because I thought that was appropriate. So before we move on, I just want to say 2 housekeeping things. If you have a consent form that you have signed, could you please pass it to your left towards this side so we can collect it? Just pass it all the way to the end of the row this way. If you do not have a consent form yet, we are working on getting more. If you need one, when we get them, we will ask you to raise your hand so we can pass them out to you. We have to make sure that the consent forms are signed before you come and speak because we need your consent. And so, as many of the speakers have mentioned, the DOJ released a report a couple weeks ago, and if you've looked at the report, it is over 100 pages, and it took me a while to get through it. So luckily, we have Timothy Mygat from the DOJ. He is a Deputy Chief of the Special Litigation Section of the Civil Rights Division, who will provide us with a brief summary of the findings, and then we'll go from there. So, Timothy, can you come up, please?
Thank you, Yvette. Thank you, and thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you to the University of Maryland Law School for having us here, and for Dean Tobin helping make that possible, to LDF, Legal Defense Fund, Sherilyn Eiffel and Monique Dixon for arranging all of this, and their staff. We really appreciate all of them doing all of this, and also to Sonia Sohn, who just spoke. We appreciate that, as well as Congressman Elijah Cummings. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. We want to hear from you at this very important stage, in this important moment in our investigation, and in this important moment for the city of Baltimore. But we needed you, not just now, we needed you during the investigation, and you guys were there. We heard from so many folks as part of our investigation in order to make our investigation adequate. And the reason why we have a 163-page report is because we had so many stories, You do it in a way that engages the community, is respectful of the community, and partners with the community to work together to solve the problems of crime and public safety in your community. And that's the vision that we have for BPD. That's where we want them to go, is to be an effective partner with their community. Let me expand very briefly, though, on some of the other findings that we made. I talked a little bit about stops. Congressman Cummings referred to this before, but our investigation found over 300,000 stops from 2010 until 2015. 300,000. As Congressman Cummings said, we also found that number was likely very significantly underreported. That is not truly representative of the number of stops that were performed in the city. What we also found, though, was that only 3.7%, a very, very small number of that 300,000, resulted in any kind of citation or arrest. 3.7%. That makes us very concerned, as we outlined in our findings, that those stops were not on the basis of reasonable suspicion, as is required by the Constitution, but instead were being done under other grounds, illegal grounds, unconstitutional grounds, and we do not want that to persist. We found, and we noted this example in our findings report, one gentleman, over 50 years old, African American, we stopped more than 30 times during the 5-year period that we looked at. He was never cited, he was never arrested, but he was stopped 30 times. I can't imagine what my relationship with my police department would be like if I was stopped 30 times, but I know that for many of you, that might be your experience every day. And that's not what we want to see happen, and not what we want to see going forward. We also talked about race discrimination in the findings report. And this was really troubling to us because in almost every area that we looked, we found that African Americans were disproportionately affected by BPD's policing activities. In stops, in searches, and in arrests, consistently, African Americans were disproportionately affected. In searches, we found that African Americans were far more likely to be searched, and they were also less likely to be found with anything on them. They both were more likely to be searched and less likely to have contraband of any kind, anything illegal that they were carrying. With arrests, we found that racial disparities were most pronounced for highly discretionary offenses, offenses like failure to obey or disorderly conduct. African Americans were disproportionately arrested in those circumstances. And then we also found that despite some of the complaints that have been raised by community members like those of you in this room, we found a significant failure to adequately investigate complaints of racial discrimination by the department. And so it was a deeply troubling finding. We also found that BPD uses excessive force at a significant rate. And this took on several different features. We found a failure to de-escalate. And we think that this is very closely related to the zero-tolerance policing that we saw, because we saw officers repeatedly in the force reports that we were looking at take very aggressive approaches, overly aggressive approaches to an incident that resulted in force being used that in many circumstances was not necessary. We also found pattern of excessive force being used against people with disabilities, people with mental illness most particularly, or otherwise in crisis of some kind. And we actually, in this report, for the first time, found that a police department, the Baltimore Police Department, violated the Americans with Disabilities Act in the way that they interacted with individuals with disabilities and the way that they used force. We also found excessive force against juveniles and against those who restrained or otherwise for fleeing when force was not necessary to be used in those circumstances. And again, I think one of the things that was most troubling to us is when we went to look how Baltimore Police Department investigated itself for complaints of excessive force. In the 5-year period that we looked at, in the period that we looked at, we found only one case where an excessive force complaint was sustained against an officer. Only one. Where we are now and where we're going, because these violations, which, as I said before, resulted from systemic deficiencies, we need to now negotiate with the City of Baltimore, and we're in the process of starting down that road with the City of Baltimore, is to fix those systemic deficiencies. How are we going to fix them? What are the remedies? And the remedies are going to be outlined in a consent decree. We entered into what's called an agreement in principle with the City of Baltimore on the same day that we issued our findings report. And in that agreement in principle, they agreed to do a few different things. Number one, they agreed that they were going to enter into a consent decree with us to remedy the issues that we saw and that we reported on in our findings. They agreed in there that consent decree is going to be subject to court oversight, and some of that has already been alluded to earlier. But a federal court is going to make sure that we stand by our word and the City of Baltimore stands by its word and does what it says it's going to do in the consent decree. It's also going to be overseen by a federal monitor. That monitor is going to report to the court, not to me, not to the City of Baltimore or the mayor, but it's going to report to the federal court to make sure that things are actually done. It also outlines in there, though, we're going to try and move very quickly to get to a consent decree. We are shooting to have a consent decree negotiated and filed by November 1st. That is extremely aggressive, and we are doing our very best to meet that deadline. But the reason why we want to meet that deadline is because we do not want the concerns that we outlined in our findings report to persist one day longer than they need to, any longer than they need to. But we need to hear from each of you to make that consent decree be as good as it possibly can be. So that hits on the last point that I wanted to say that we outlined in the agreement in principle, is that we built into that agreement in principle with the city's agreement a public input period right at the very beginning here, and we are in the middle of that right now. It's due to end actually on Friday. That does not mean that we want to stop engaging with you. That means that we want to hear from you as quickly as possible to be able to get your input on what needs to be remedied, what needs to be reformed in the Baltimore Police Department based on the findings that we made. So we will continue to engage with you. Your engagement is extremely important, but we want to hear from you. And that's actually the purpose of tonight. So I'm very thankful to have this meeting tonight to be able to hear from each of you. Of course, the consent decree that we negotiate is going to hit on each of those areas from the findings that I already outlined. But it's going to be broader. It's going to include, as I already said, accountability, and we need to hear from you on what's going to make accountability really work with the Baltimore Police Department. Reforms have been attempted before. What's going to work this time? What's going to make it actually work? Internal investigations, what needs to be fixed? Recruitment and retention. What do we need to do to try to address the issues in Baltimore Police Department about that? Training, what needs to work better? What needs to be different about how training is done in the future? What kind of data needs to be collected? What kind of analysis needs to be done? What kind of data do you need in the community to know what your police department is doing and to be able to hold them accountable for how they police? Then we also want to be trying to address in there certain types of programs or other types of services to prevent police department interactions in the first place. Mental health services, youth programs. What types of services can help prevent even having negative interactions with the police department in the first place to try and cut that off? So that's another area that we want to try to address. Community policing. Fundamental community policing is a key area of this consent decree. We want that to be proactive, we want it to be engaged, we want it to be collaborative, because we want the police and the community to work together. And we need to try and start rebuilding that relationship through this consent decree. And then, maybe most critically, community oversight. What should that look like? We want your ideas on what that looks like. We've done different things in other cities. We've created community oversight in other places. But this needs to work for Baltimore, not just some cookie cutter that we've brought from some other place. We don't want a cookie cutter. We want to know what you in Baltimore need to be able to partner with your police department. And so I just want to end with where other people have already said it, but I want to reiterate it so that you hear it from the Department of Justice. We need the community to stay engaged. We need ongoing engagement from each of you. We need ongoing oversight from each of you. The Baltimore Police Department is the Baltimore Police Department. It needs to be the police department of the community. So we want to hear from you. We're very excited to hear from you tonight, and we're thankful that you've asked us to be here. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Tim. Tim had a really difficult job of putting 100 pages into 8 to 10 minutes. If you haven't read the report, it's really, really important for you to do so. It has some really interesting facts in there. Before I introduce the community discussion facilitators, I want to ask you again, please fill out the consent forms before you come up here. You will not be allowed to speak if you do not sign the consent form. Please sign them and send them to the end of your row. We have a volunteer over here and another over there who will collect the forms. Please sign them and send them to the end of your row. And if you have a seat next to you, could you please raise your hand? Empty seat. For those who are standing and would like to sit, please make your way to the empty seats. We'd like to have as many people seated as possible. Please keep your hands raised if you have an empty seat next to you. People should start moving, please. I know your hands are tired, but please, if you have an empty seat, please make your way to an empty seat if you are standing in the aisle. Thank you. And so we've reached the portion of the program where it is most important. I'm going to introduce two people who will facilitate the conversation tonight. They will give the ground rules and explain what the feedback process is. So we have Carmen Dixon from LDF. She's a community organizer. There's Carmen. And then we have Raleek Hayes of Baltimore Block. He will also be facilitating the discussion. And so I'll have both of them take over for now. Thank you.
So good evening, everyone. Once again, my name is Raleek Hayes. I'm with the community organization Baltimore Block. I do want to say a few things before we get started. and Carmen explains like how this process is going to work. One, the family of Tyrone West is outside. They've been protesting for 100 and how many weeks? 163 weeks for justice for a guy that was murdered in Baltimore City by Baltimore City Police. They will come inside, and so I want to uplift that family. There are other community members here who have been doing this work on the ground since way before Freddie Gray was killed, right? So I want people to understand that and uplift that and honor that. I'll also say that I definitely disagree with some things said here tonight. I rock with the people of Baltimore City first. I'm a city resident first. Politics, town halls, you name it, all that comes second to being with the people of the city. And if we're gonna, if the DOJ is really here to help us, they're not gonna listen to the people, they're gonna take direction from the people, right? That's a big difference, right? Because when the people are in charge, things change. We have solutions. And so I just wanna put that out there as Raleigh Hayes of Baltimore Block. LDF has nothing to do with what I say, but I wanna make sure it's clear of where I stand before we continue this thing.
All right, thank you, Raleigh. All right, how's everybody feeling? Everybody all right? Ready to dig in? Yeah. Okay. So my name is Carmen Dixon. I am an organizer with the Legal Defense Fund, and happy to be here this evening. I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping items. Again, if you haven't completed your consent forms, there's actually 2 consent forms, one from the production company and one from LDF that you will need to complete if you want to come up and speak, because you will be filmed. Once you come up to speak, if you can actually say your name, the stenographer is actually taking notes. If you are comfortable stating your name, please state your name. Additionally, I just want to express that this is actually an opportunity for you to think about public safety. And often we do an exercise and we just ask folks to close their eyes. So just take about 20 seconds. If you could just close your eyes. So as your eyes are closed, I actually want you to think about the things that make you feel most safe. When do you feel most safe? Take about 10 seconds and think about that. Okay. So folks have already come up and stood up and talked about how this is actually an opportunity. This is not an opportunity to imagine. That's what you just did. You just imagined the possibilities, and they can go as broad as you personally imagine. So again, this isn't the time to talk about what you don't want. It's the time to talk about what you envision and how you want folks how you want to lead, not just have folks listen to you, as Raleigh said, how you actually want to lead your community. So that's an opportunity. That's what the opportunity is this evening, for you to just think about public safety, maybe in a different way than you've thought about it before. So we're going to give you 2 minutes to speak. We're doing that because there's probably 200 plus people in the room, and we want to get as many people in as we can. So we're going to be very strict with that 2 minutes. We have Rena. Where's Rena? Rena's right here. I missed her. Rena's right here in the front. She's gonna let you know when you have 1 minute left, and when you have 30 seconds left, and when your time is up. Please begin to conclude at 30 seconds. 1 minute if you talk a lot and you need to wrap it up. At 2 minutes, we're gonna have to cut you off, unfortunately.
I'd also like to put out, if you have a question, this is not actually I don't think the time. Are we asking questions, if I'm correct?
I think we're probably gonna do next steps, and you also have a comment form. So included in your packet is a comment form where you can actually make comments. If you want to get up here and say something, or if you don't want to get up here and say something, you can include it in your comment form and submit that as well. That can include questions. I wanted to ask our DOJ representative for the email address that folks can actually provide comments as well.
Absolutely. It's community.baltimore@usdoj.gov.
Community.baltimore@usdoj.gov. Okay. got it. All right, so we are ready to begin, and we have, I think, 2 people who are actually going to come up and kick us off and sort of also model. And I think Dina will get us started. This is Dina Robinson. Thank you, Dina.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dina Robinson, and I'm a former Baltimore City Schools teacher and a current 3rd year here at the law school. The DOJ report told us something that most Baltimoreans already knew, that the police's interaction with Baltimore and her citizens is incredibly broken, and that Baltimore has been hurting for a long time. Perhaps the most holistic pathway forward for Baltimore and this consent decree is to have a community policing program and processes for reconciliation. BPD should create a vision for what community policing should look like now and in the future, and should work within communities to identify stakeholders who can help us achieve that end. More specifically, the consent decree should contain a provision requiring police officers in the districts in which they police and serve to have weekly conversations that are facilitated by Baltimore community mediators. We need this in our city to rebuild the trust that has been broken for years now in this city, because this is not new, and we know that this is not new. What we need is a time for reconciliation and to bear witness to the pain that has been plaguing Baltimore for so long. I'm looking around the room, and this is a powerful room to me. This is what true power looks like, and this is our time now to get reconciliation for Baltimore and to have us bridge our relationship with the police. Let us use our collective power right now and here to create a better Baltimore for ourselves, our children, and our future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dina. And folks can actually come along the outer aisles and start lining up if you wish with your comments. No, just in order. So we'll rotate. So Dina started on this side. We'll actually have our second person come up on this side.
Good evening. How you doing? How you doing? My problem is with the I'm an independent filmmaker. I'm an activist. I'm one of the originators of the Baltimore Block. My name is Shorty. Everybody know me as Shorty. This right here is from Governor O'Malley when he was mayor. It was a Get Shorty program, and the program was policing the police. This is my son. He was killed in December of 2006. I'm from Chicago. He was killed in another state, but we still dying from Chicago to Baltimore. This here says I was policing the police. On February 11, 2011, I was locked up, incarcerated illegally because I was making this documentary about the play-to-play politics here in Maryland. Senator McFadden got it. Doc Cheatham got it. The elected officials in this state got it, and Congressman Cummings got it, and I've been trying to see him for like 8 years. All right, and we just don't have these opportunities to see each other face to face. I done been to DC, I done been to Annapolis, I testify, I give testimony, I give time, and what I want, since I only got 1 minute left, this dissent decree ain't gonna mean nothing, because all you're doing is smacking them on their hand, and they've been doing the same thing for the last 30 years. If you're gonna do anything with this dissent decree, in Chicago, Illinois, in 1986, it was called the Operation Greylord. They took the findings from the Department of Justice and they criminally prosecuted these individuals. So if you're going to do anything, criminally prosecute these police officers, criminally prosecute these public officials, and if a public official is using this position, and he's using the police to protect them, he need to go to jail too. If I went to jail for 186 days for a crime I didn't commit, they need to go to jail for the crimes they is commit.
Hello everyone, my name is Erica White. I ran for city council this year. I have been a practicing attorney in the state of Maryland for some time. I'm not practicing at this point. I raised 2 sons here. I was educated here myself, and I was born here. So I currently live in Cherry Hill. And that's one of the roughest neighborhoods in Baltimore City. I've been there on and off since 1986. So having that experience, raising my sons, being educated here, and going from a middle-class neighborhood to a poor neighborhood, I understand the difficulty. So I have a list. I'm going to do this in list fashion because I know I'm going to run out of time soon. So what is essentially happening here is you have a government policy of policing the poor. That's because the poor are disenfranchised and they are seen as a threat because they're desperate. They're seen as being desperate because of their economic circumstances. That bias needs to end. You also have judges who rubber stamp police search warrants. That needs to stop. You need to reevaluate the relationship between the state's attorney's office and the police department. They are all separated into the same divisions. You also need to provide de-escalation training for the police, and you need to do something. My suggestion is that you do something about the racism that is prevalent in the police department itself. You cannot solve the issue of racism on the outside if you do not solve the problem, the issue of racism on the inside. You have economically disenfranchised African Americans in pockets in the neighborhood, which is the reason why you have so many different housing issues here. So you need to reevaluate in the era of passive oppression and the allocation of resources and employment to your poorest citizens. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, welcome everyone. My name is Doug Colbert. I'm a law professor here at Maryland Law School, and I want to first commend DOJ for giving one of the most accurate and thorough reports that's ever been published, certainly in our state, about what happens at the point of people being stopped, searched, and arrested. But I also want to challenge DOJ to go beyond the arrest, because we have a system of justice. And so while the focus is on the police, we really need to focus on what happens after people are arrested. And we have to look at the fact that when people are charged with crime, that they often are going to be facing bail situations, and in order to get out of jail, they're either going to have to pay a bail bondsman or they're going to stay in jail on the most minor of charges for an average of 45 days in our city. And we have to ask ourselves, why is it that the police, granted they have the power to arrest, someone should be reviewing those arrests before they come into the system? Because right now it's the police who are charging people with crimes, and that's something that's really unheard of. The police cannot charge the people they arrest. That's the job of a prosecutor to review those arrests. That's the way it's done everywhere else. But the police know that once they charge, they're going to appear before a judicial officer. And too often, judicial officers will set bail. They have some reasons for setting bail, but they have to be mindful of the fact that people do not have the money to pay for bail. So either the bail bondsman gets incredibly wealthy out of this, and believe me, they're one of the wealthiest folks in our state, or people are going to stay in jail. When they stay in jail, they lose jobs, they're separated from family, they miss school. And so finally what happens after that is when they get out of jail, then the public has to pay the cost. So we really have to do something. The DOJ has to continue to connect the dots to an entire system that right now is a system of injustice for too many people. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Janoid Barr, for legal reasons, for Ms. Stenographer. Everybody calls me Shadow. I am a peer advocate in the Penn North community. I have lived there for 18 years. I will not speak in what about I don't like or don't care. You ask for solutions, I'm gonna give you a couple. First, the police, in general, are not granted special rights by any means on any part of the Constitution, nowhere in any legal book. Therefore, when they commit murder or any other crime, they should be charged and treated as such. First. Secondly, it is a job, it's a very, very hard job, and I have actually come to understand that over a long period of time because my father was a police officer. No cop should be a cop longer than a year. It creates bias. Until somebody recognizes the type of post-traumatic stress that comes with a job that pits you against a certain kind of people over a long period of time and the hatred and the biases that it creates, it will remain a problem. Thirdly, no, my bad, let me finish the first one. Therefore, I believe being a police officer should be treated like jury duty. And they should be trained as much as it takes to be a child care worker, which takes 9 months to a year, as opposed to 2 months in a police academy, and you give me lethal weapons. Thirdly, it's a very personal thing. Lastly, it's a very personal thing. Stop labeling people. Police officers are people. The criminal statistics that you hear are describing people. The people who are disenfranchised and hungry and are forced to break the law because of unfair conditions that have lasted to date 46 years are people. The time to notice that other people are actually people is every time you look in the mirror. My name is Jannard. I am a human being and I look like you and you and you and you. Thank you.
Peace and blessing, everyone. My name is Brother Bay. I'm the founder of FOXO, which is an acronym for Fraternal Order of Ex-Offenders. Law governs everything. I have over 50 years' experience dealing with the criminal justice system at every capacity. Yesterday, I was Saul. By God's grace and mercy, today I'm Paul. We continue to talk about the police. We need to talk about the criminal justice system. It's a no-brainer. What we are talking about, violating First Amendment, Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Sixth Amendment, Eighth Amendment, due process and equal protection of the law, and the 14th Amendment. And the problem is because we do not understand systems. Police is a part of the criminal justice system, and its mandate is it's a system of social control. So what it does is focus on people who are out of control in violation of the norms of folk ways and more ways of this society. I'm not relieving them of the schisms and racism. We are 28% of the population in the state of Maryland. We need to ask ourselves why is the African-American male is 80% that is apprehended and 90% that's incarcerated. We need to understand that it's about business. The first largest industry in America is the military. Second to that is the criminal justice system. So what we need to do as ordinary John Q. citizens, we need to study the process so that we can hold folks accountable. I did not bring it, but I got the law that the Department of Justice lawyers could have implemented, you understand me, to indict these folks. It's traditional. And one of the things that I say, we deal with high-risk, at-risk youth. Crime, drugs and violence, Bloods, Crip, Piru. We're not intimidated by them. We've been there. We've done that. You have to engage those folks. Do not come in our community when you cannot build a relationship with the people in the community. There's a distinction. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Cindy Walsh, and Clinton wrote an executive order called the Federalism Act. The Republicans were glad to see it. It basically gave states rights, and we've gone through decades of having the federal government ignore our U.S. constitutional rights, civil liberties. The left-leaning Democrats have been shouting for decades to stop it. It's illegal. It's unconstitutional. It never should have been allowed. Now, the right-leaning voters have been shouting all this term of Obama because now those executive orders are violating the parts of the Constitution they want. It's illegal. The Federalism Act. We do not want it carried on to the next president. It takes the U.S. Justice Department, it takes our civil rights lawyers, it takes our Congress people to keep the executive branch from using something that denies us our rights. That's why it takes a mayor or a governor to bring the DOJ into our city to look at things, and we cannot as citizens get that DOJ into here, our city to do it for us. And it's why the DOJ never does anything after they investigate, because it takes that mayor or governor again to say, come on in. So this report will be just like the New York City, the Oakland, DOJ, where nothing was done. Commissioner Batts worked at Oakland as a police commissioner, and he left there refusing to enforce the DOJ against the Oakland Police Department. And he was brought here and installed knowing that he doesn't accept that DOJ report. So we know what we have going on here. We don't want to see it again. We want justice. And we want our citizens who need justice to get that justice in the courtroom and get these people jailed. That's what the DOJ can do for us. Thank you.
Greetings. My name is Wardell Wilson, and I'm the president of the National Association of Historically Black Colleges and Universities. And our position is quite simple. We should salute police officers who serve our communities with integrity. However, we should prosecute and then execute pigs with badges on that murder unarmed black men. Now, I say that to say this. I'm not up here to rant and rage. I'm up here to give solutions. The first thing that we're proposing is the Law Enforcement Mental Health Act. I'm a lender in the state of Maryland. Every year I have to take continuing education courses to make sure that the service I render is fit for the community. The same thing with nurses, the same thing with anyone that's licensed in the state of Maryland. Police officers take an oath. And we're saying that the DOJ right now, not just Baltimore, across the nation, can create an examination for policemen to take a psychological examination backed by a polygraph. And anyone with dysfunctional racism should be fired, terminated immediately. Number one. Number two, they talked about the Fourth and the First Amendment constitutional issues. But when you see an innocent, unarmed black person being murdered, their Sixth Amendment constitutional right is being destroyed also. And to that end, we say that when an unarmed black person is murdered, or any American for that matter, and video evidence is there, that not only should there be state charges or whatever, it doesn't have to be a hate crime, but it should be a federal offense, because your constitutional Sixth Amendment right is being denied because they do not have due process, because that policeman is acting as a judge, the jury, and the executioner. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ralph Moore. I live in Charles Village, but I was born in Sandtown, Winchester, worked in Johnston Square for many years over in East Baltimore, and just got finished working over in the Park Heights neighborhood. So I've been in here in the city all my life. A couple of thoughts and recommendations very quickly. One is that maybe everyone here should read, and maybe on the police department should read Carol Anderson's book, White Rage. It's about the historic reaction of white America to black American progress. And I'd highly recommend it. She's a professor down at Emory University. It's an extremely well-written and well-documented book, and I highly recommend that you read it. Secondly, I'm wondering if we should get pocket copies of the Constitution for every member of the police department. I don't know, maybe they should be required to carry one with them. Thirdly, I want us all to be aware that it feels as if over the last couple of weeks, the last few months, maybe over the last year, that there's been a punch to the gut to the citizens of Baltimore, that the Freddie Gray death, after so many other deaths and brutalities by the police department, has been very, very difficult on the citizenry, including those who haven't been touched by it. Then 6 police officers get to walk after going on trial. Nothing happens. Nobody's held accountable for Freddie Gray's death. That has a devastating impact. Then there's attacks by the police department, the legal lawyers, by the media on Marilyn Mosby for doing her job. Then we find out there's aerial surveillance. Their police are up in airplanes looking at neighborhoods. So it all feels like punches to the gut. The last thing I would want to recommend is that the police be evaluated. They're evaluated to consider them for being hired, but they should be evaluated ongoingly for their mental, physical, emotional, and psychological health. They should be tested. And if they don't pass the test, they should be either put on probation or fired. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Kim Humphrey. I'm an education advocate with the ACLU of Maryland. I also work with a coalition called the Coalition to Reform School Discipline. I am ecstatic that all of you all are here, very concerned about the Baltimore City Police. I am here to elevate the small parts of the report that are also very, very important that relate to the Baltimore City School Police. I recommend that the school police are given as much attention, especially since they are, there's evidence that they are basically an auxiliary, is how it's identified, to the Baltimore City Police. And I wanted to flag for the city and especially for the DOJ recommendations that will come from the coalition, CRSD, regarding clearly defining an MOU between the Baltimore Police Department and the city schools. A lot of the issues that are outlined for the city are very equally related to the relationships between the students and the school police. So we cannot let that linger. And I know there's still some debate about how they will be included, but I urge you to include them. An example of things that can be done is tracking the creation and implementation of diversion programs. This is something that needs to be done for the school police and the city police because we know that they have a lot of direct interaction. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Stan Becker. I'm at the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health and also the Quaker meeting on 31st and Charles. I have 3 quick things I'd like to say. First, I read a fascinating editorial op-ed in the New York Times. I'd like to quote a paragraph. This was from the Los Angeles police chief and someone else there. The police are only half the equation. The partnership demands changes from the community that may be even harder to deliver. In Los Angeles, grieving parents had to agree to join cops who had jailed or killed their children during the wars on drugs and gangs. The Community Safety Partnership began with an officer's apology for past police transgressions. After that, Watts and East Los Angeles leaders agreed to work with the police department in the pilot program. Maybe we can learn from Los Angeles and other cities that have been through this. Second thing I'd like to say, if we want to reduce crime and reduce police inappropriate presence, we need to get good jobs, good housing, and we must bring more funds to Baltimore City. And how are we going to do that? I would like to remind folks that the military budget of this country is about 600 or so billion. Is that right, Congressman Cummings? Close to 600 billion. I'm not talking million, billion dollars. Maybe we need to reorient some of that money. The last thing I'd like to say, and please contact Congress about this because the military-industrial complex is all over. Virtually every congressional district in this country has military installations that lobby for more money. So we have to, if we're people of peace, we need to consider that. I'd also we need to consider what Mayor Schmoke suggested years ago, and that is decriminalize drugs. So much of our crime is related to drugs, and the policing is related to that, and it's not a good use. Drug is a medical problem, a physical problem, not a police problem. The last thing I'd like to say is I have a slight critique of the report. I've worked on profiling, I've published on that, and I'll give that directly to the gentleman who was sitting in front of me from the DOJ, because that's not what you're here for. You're here to hear suggestions for the future. Thank you very much.
All right. Good evening. My name is Dwayne Bond Jr. I'm a 1L day student here at the University of Maryland School of Law. I was born and raised here in Baltimore. I have interacted with this city on many intimate levels, and I care deeply about this city moving forward. The DOJ report revealed that many devastating truths communities of color in Baltimore have been saying for years. I believe it's important that we understand there is a perception of unequal punishment and selective justice among communities of color in regards to these issues. In the DOJ report, specific examples of unlawful activity among officers were cited. While those examples will go a long way to help reform policing, it would be a disservice to the very intent of this process if thorough investigations and meaningful actions aren't taken in regards to the allegations raised in the DOJ report. It is important that there is public confidence in this process. Communities of color deserve meaningful and tangible changes. Addressing the overt actions presented in the DOJ report shows the seriousness and necessary first steps the City of Baltimore is willing to take. Also, since I still have time, I think very important actions that can be taken in regards to police specifically is any instance in where a police officer draws their weapon, they should be a mandatory drug test afterwards. Any instance in when there's a police-involved shooting or killing, there should be a mandatory drug test. Should be psych evals every year for a police officer. Those are my suggestions. Thank you.
My name is Cindy Farquhar, and about the process here tonight, I don't understand why this hall is so small. This is the University of Maryland Law School, and I do not believe that this is the largest hall that they have. I want to follow up on Shorty and Shadow about saying that it's no guarantee that this DOJ report will do anything, and I would like to know Tim's last name. I would like for everybody to have to say their name slowly so that all of us can get this information back to our communities, not just the stenographer over there getting our names. So what is your last name? McGatt, M-C-G-A-T-T? M-Y-G-A-T-T. All right, and then the next thing is, I want to know, what did the 5 or 8 police who were immediately fired after the DOJ report came out do? If I'm not allowed to know their names because it's a personnel matter, fine, but I want to know what they did. This story got immediately buried. I would love to know tonight. If you will not tell me tonight for any particular reason, then I would like for the media to be following up on this so that we will know why those, I don't know whether it was 5 or 8, I get different stories. Well, there was a story that they were? That was a lie. That was a lie. Okay, that's all right, it's all right. I won't take my 2 minutes, I promise you. All right, so they weren't even fired. All right, so I would like to know what they did that put out the word that they were at least fired. All right, there should be, in the libraries, there should be library boxes where, thank you, library boxes where people can put in anonymous comments to the DOJ in every single library in Baltimore. There should be training in Baltimore City schools to become a police person, and that should not be just for 2 weeks. And lastly, there should be a library in the Sandtown-Winchester area, which is not Penn North, which is not the Hilton Parkway. It is south of there, and there is no library in that entire section. And then you can put a library box there. Thank you.
I just wanted to note that we have about 40 minutes left, and by the looks of things, if folks that are lined up along the edges, it looks like we have a little bit, maybe over 30 people. So it'd be great if you don't necessarily need to take the 2 minutes. If you could be really clear, really succinct, that would be awesome. All right, thank you.
Hello all, my name is Renard Parks. My occupation is I'm a Baltimore City resident. I'd say that not to say that it isn't important to know what I do, but it was clear to me by that report that it isn't important of what your occupation is. And I say that because You stood in front of us all, and you used words like relationship, force, de-escalation, internal investigation. You spoke about force on mental illness and disabilities. In the time frame of that report, I lost a lot of brothers and sisters, a lot, across the nation. That report was being done. Reading that report, it pretty much justified everything we already knew. I've talked to family members for 20 years older than me, down to my age. It was everything we already knew. And the fact that we know that de-escalation is a problem, but a man died and lost his life in the hands of the police and nothing happened, you're finagling us. That's to believe that something will come from that. Because if that was true and we sat in court and we let these people go and we knew that this was a problem with our department, any human being would do anything they can do to give that family rest, not telling them he was a drug dealer or whatever the case may be. And that was all I heard here. So as far as my suggestions going forward, I think that the police should do the POW centers as I grew up with. Police in the community, seriously. An airplane surveillance isn't going to stop what we call the war on drugs. People will. Accountability is major. What I said about the occupation is major to me, because I wake up every day to go to work, and so does a police officer. If you want me to believe in blue, you should have the same rules as me. You should be accountable for when you do not do the right things that you are paid for. In outreach, you should be transparent. There's no reason that there's things flying around me, watching me, and I found out later on, and I'm being told now what it's being used for. I didn't believe you before because of non-transparency. So that's my issue. You guys have a good evening.
How you guys doing? My name is Louis. I'm Louis Laurie. I'm a senior at Mervo, and I'm a part of the Clear Youth Advocacy Council. In my opinion, the best way to actually improve the Baltimore City Police is to build better police-student relations. You can't focus on the people that already hate you. You have to focus on the people that are just getting to know you. When you create a relationship with the younger generation, you effectively better reactions to police presence, so it won't always be like you have to run from the police or is the police hide or whatever the case may be. It creates an overall safer environment for the people that are living in the communities. And last but not least, it smooths tension with youth. You know, because after the uprising, youth see police as public enemy number one. And that shouldn't be the way it is. Police are here to protect us and make sure we're safe. I've seen this firsthand from an officer at my school. Her name is Officer Kenya. She actually, anytime you need anything, Officer Kenya was there. You talked to her. She even created a program for the young women of Mervo to actually be groomed. Now, some may believe that the problem stems from adults, not teenagers, but 1/3 of American teenagers are arrested before 23. So I'm not going to colorize this because it's bigger than black and white. And this is all about reforming the justice system and creating a better justice system for my kids to grow up in. And we need to focus on attacking the root cause of the problem, not just symptoms of the problem. So a symptom would be prosecuting officers, when the root cause of the problem could be training, and we can stop this before it escalates and get worse. Thank you.
Good evening. I am Dr. Marvin Doc Cheatham. I'm a lifelong resident of Baltimore City. I've had the honor of being the local president of the NAACP, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and the National Action Network. In February of 2005, I requested and held a meeting with then Mayor Martin O'Malley, then Commissioner Leonard Ham, and members of the Baltimore City Branch NAACP Board. We requested that the mayor and then commissioner immediately halt what was called zero tolerance, what we called illegal arrests. At the end of that meeting, we were told, you do what you have to do, we have to do what we have to do. Fortunately, the next year, 2006, we filed a lawsuit in conjunction with the Maryland ACLU against the city of Baltimore, the mayor, and the police. I am recommending, as I have put in writing, to the United States Department of Justice that one additional thing be added with the consent decree.
What we found one of the shortcomings in our agreement with the city of Baltimore and the police, as admitted by the monitor that we had, that Baltimore City and the police were not in full compliance of the settlement agreement that we signed. I am suggesting to the United States Department of Justice, the City of Baltimore, and the police, if you really want to be transparent, include in the consent decree a process by which there will be continuous monitoring of the monitor. We need monitors to monitor the monitor that are community leaders and community residents, so we don't find, as we did in our settlement, a year and a half later, non-compliance. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kenneth Jackson. Thank you. This is a very unique opportunity to actually be able to speak. I know everyone brought very different point of views, in particular as far as what should be in this consent order. I think one thing that definitely needs to be there that can kind of help spur some of the change with the other things, we need to change the laws. So whether it's Department of Justice or if it's some type of thing as far as with the Baltimore Police Department, has to be some rules as far as with engagement. As a person who served in the military, in special forces, the Geneva Conventions governs use of force. I understand I have police officers in my family. The fact that they need to make it at home at night does not give them the right to take someone's life because they're in fear. As with the Geneva Conventions, I cannot point my weapon if I don't understand that this is a clear target. Not that I'm scared, not that I'm worried about coming home or any of that thing. I have to understand that it's a clear threat in a target. That's something that has to be as far as with the police. Even in the Geneva Conventions, I can't respond with a force that's greater than what is exuded to me. So that goes for a lot of these different things. Whether you got people with weapons, why can't you use beanbags? Why can't tasers? Why can't we do different things other than using a weapon? Then once that person is no longer of a threat, I'm legally rendered to give this person aid, whether they took out my buddy to the left or the right of me. Once that person was no longer a threat, I had to give this person aid. So the thing that I say to you, Congressman Cummings and the Department of Justice, why does an African-American male walking in the streets in Baltimore have less rights than a person in actual warfare?
Good evening. My name is Keisha Ha. I was raised in Baltimore. I'm a product of the Baltimore City school system. I returned here 3 years ago. I lived in San Diego. I lived in South Africa. I lived in Tennessee. And I say all of this to say that I've heard a lot of people who said that they weren't surprised. And I think I saw Congressman Cummings on TV right after the DOJ report. But I was. I wasn't surprised that these things were happening, but I was surprised and I was taken aback to see it in black and white. I stayed up until 2 in the morning when it came out. I read 163 pages. And some of the things were disheartening, to say the least. But I know we have some suggestions to give to the DOJ. I do agree with the point that was made that the DOJ is not going to be the answer. The answer lies in our youth and our children. The one thing that I would like to come, though, out of this report and out of this discussion has to do with the demonstrations, the unrest, and not riots, words matter, that happened because of the after at Mondawmin. As I said, I'm a retired journalism professor. So when I read that report or I saw the children, and at that time I lived on Harlem and Bentlow Street, so it wasn't too far away from me. And I saw what happened, and I saw that the children were provoked by police. The police were throwing rocks and bottles and bricks at the students. And there were no charges, no arrests because of that. It wasn't mentioned in the DOJ report. So my last point, other than to investigate what went on at Mondawmin while the buses were taken down, was to have police officers who serve our community, live in our community. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Craig Minor, Jr., and I am a student at Mergenthaler Vocational Technical High School, in case you didn't know what this logo right here stood for. And I'm currently a member of CLEA, or Community Law and Action's Youth Advisory Council. Now, excuse me if my thoughts and my words aren't the utmost cohesive, please, if my words aren't the utmost cohesive, please bear with me, school is hard. Now, as a student looking forward to college and my future career, I worry about a lot of things. The powers tasked to protect me shouldn't be one. As I progress through my education, I've struggled with the perception of what police are and what police should do. I've seen them do good things, and I've also seen them do bad things. Now, when I think about my future, I think of my kids. Weird, yes, I know. Thank you for reminding me. But in thinking of that, I also think of my childhood and what I was told. When you see the police, warn a brother. Always being warned to run if targeted by the police. When I think of my kids, these warnings are not something that I want on their consciousness when they go to sleep at night. And this is the problem. Over the current years that I've been in education or going through my education, I've been working with boards committed to growing student-police relationships. Now, which brings me to the topic of my concern, student engagement inside of schools. The biggest problem going forward in the community, or my idea, is community ideology. When I envision this community, I envision a society of people raised on the idea or raised in the generalization or general concept that the police are a problem. And where do we begin to solve this problem? Do we begin with the people who've learned to fear the police? No, we start with the youth. The youth are the future. I say this to affirm the idea that that police should stay in schools, solely as a facet to encourage growth. But this growth can only be achieved when police start viewing our people and our students as people, not as targets of their arrests. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Congressman Cummings, for having us here tonight. I appreciate your leadership. My name is Louis Fields, and I've been in Baltimore over 5 decades. And on October 21st, 2012, on a Sunday morning, I went outside my house, saw my car. In front of my car was 2 police officers. But instead of just issuing me a ticket for illegal being parked 1 feet too far from the curb, he threatened me with arrest. He grabbed me, and then he put a ticket on my car that stated I was blocking the street. Now, this ticket, of all the tickets he could have gave me, was the highest one he could give me, $252. So then the tow truck man comes. The cop says, well, work out a deal with the tow truck man. Maybe he won't tow your car. I'm the police. I can't stop it from being towed. Well, $500 later, 4 months later, I get my car, I get my money back. But meanwhile, I file a complaint with the district commander. Went nowhere. I filed a complaint with the mayor and the city council in internal affairs. So finally, I got this letter. And this letter, this is just one of the small things that police officers do, the bad ones. We applaud the good ones. But here's what they do when they could have just gave me a ticket. But anyway, at the end of the case, the officers, the commander sent me this letter. The investigation has revealed that violations of rules and regulations have occurred, and the case has been referred to command discipline in accordance with this agency disciplinary process. Now, I have no idea what happened after that. So I have about 10 things that I would like to see the Baltimore police officers do with this consent decree. And I can't give you all 10, but I'll give you 2 of them. Number 5, the district commanders must be held accountable. The district commander, he must be held accountable. And I'll just quickly give you number 7. We have to amend that false Bill of Rights that give police officers 10 days before they can be investigated. So I got about 10 of these things, and I give them to someone. Thank you.
My name is Sawanda Jones. I am Tyrone West. My brother Tyrone West was brutally murdered. And I'm not even going to get into that. I'm not even going to get into that because I don't want to waste my 2 minutes. And let's be clear, we're going to get our 2 minutes each. I want to start off by saying, I don't consent to anything. Nothing short of killer cops and cell blocks. If y'all don't see it in this book, and this don't even show all of the corruption. Everybody wanted to talk about black people pulling the black card. This is beyond pulling the black card. The race card is out the window. And I just want to thank Warren Branch, who I see, the only councilman that stood by my family and sponsored a bill. While everybody else played the Doug and Pony show, I'm not consenting to nothing, and I suggest nobody do because it's too deep-rooted. To me, consent to anything is like signing over another brother to get brutally murdered or executed. Enough's enough. I'm tired of being sick and tired. And at the end of the day, these animals who brutally murdered my brother is still walking the streets. And they almost killed Abdul Salam on July the 1st, and then to learn 24 days before. And not only they're guilty, the mayor's guilty. Let's call a spade a spade. Greg Bernstein is guilty for giving all them animals full immunity. All of them. That's exactly why we got them kicked out of office. The Commissioner Betts, everybody is guilty. My brother blood is on all of y'all hands. And until y'all do something, nothing's going to be done. I'm not consenting to nothing. And let's be real clear on that. And the medical examiner's office is more corrupt. They sat up there and hid my brother's body for 5 days. And to this day, 1,141 days, no autopsy pictures, only ID photos. We know what they hid. My brother was brutally executed. He didn't die. He was executed on the spot in Baltimore City way before Freddie Gray. And for 163 weeks, my family been out here, and y'all thought we was crazy. Nobody wanted to hear. Y'all thought we was making it up. Now it's in your face. What are y'all going to do? If y'all not putting killer cops in cell blocks, get out my face. I ain't consenting to nothing.
All right, I'm gonna sit this right here because this is this brother's form. But first we have to review the codes and articles of Maryland because it's totally biased. You know what I mean? Racially biased. You know what I mean? Right. It's this everything. Well, this culture that we're in. You know what culture that we're in. It's totally like messing up our harmonic frequencies. It's not teaching us anything. It's dumbing us down. So if you're dumbing us down and you're oppressing us at the same time, what you think gonna happen? Problems, right? You know what? I'm gone.
Take your time, man. Take your time. You got your time, man.
Wrong mic?
No, you're good.
I'm the mother of Tyrone West. My family have been out here fighting for 3 long years, and we never gave up this fight for justice. What I would like to say to the congressman and the lady that was sitting next to him, I can't remember her name. If you can recall, before Freddie Gray, before any of this transpired with this uproar, my family came to you. We met with you, congressman. We told you what was going on in this city. We cried, we prayed. Only thing we ever asked for was transparency. We told you how we were treated by the mayor on down. No one helped my family. People in this room should be ashamed of yourself. Tyrone West was murdered. Can you understand? A man's flesh was beaten to death by 15 stinking officers, and no one was held accountable. How do you think my family feel? We go through this pain every day, and all we ever asked for was accountability. We need these murderers off the street. How can we ever trust the police when you still have these murderers working these streets? You expect us to have some sort of relationship with the Baltimore Police Department? That's never going to happen until they clean that dirty house. That house filthy. The whole stinking city of Baltimore should be ashamed of yourself to put a family in this kind of pain. This pain deep-rooted. It's never going anywhere. Beat my son worse than an animal, unarmed. They beat him till he was no longer moving, no longer breathing, no longer screaming. My son was dead, and these stinking officers still kicked him all in his head, in his back. Eyewitness account. How dare you come here and think we're going to sign a decree? For what? So you can continue to go on and murder us. That paper means nothing to my family. Nothing. And we will not sign nothing. Only thing we're going to agree with is putting these murderers in jail, cleaning that stinking police department, getting rid of all them animals.
Hello, my name's Adam Jackson. I'm the CEO of Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle, grassroots think tank here in Baltimore. One of the things that I wanted to mention is that over the past few years, organizations and leaders like myself and others have been working for police accountability here in Baltimore, particularly in Maryland. And one thing that we've noticed is the major impediment to accountability is civilian oversight of policing in Baltimore and around Maryland. And when people talk about civilian oversight, people always ask the question, why should civilians be involved in policing? And the thing is, when you want to look at your doctor, you have a choice in who's your doctor, but when you call 911, you don't have a choice in who responds to the call when you have an issue with police. And so one thing that we've been worried about with this DOJ consent decree is that there is no talking about how the federal government is going to be here in Baltimore and testifying in Annapolis in particular on how they're going to assist in passing legislation that changes these laws that are codified in Maryland law, because a lot of these things aren't about policy. So the DOJ consent decree affects policies of the police department, but in the long term, in the grand scheme of things, we're not talking about changing codified Maryland law, that we're not talking about civilian oversight in policing. And particularly when you talk about the Maryland Fraternal Order of Police, which is a private union that actually organizes police officers and was a major impediment to a lot of us passing legislation in this past legislative session. And so that's what we've been seeing in terms of the DOJ consent decree and what its involvement is with organizers like myself. And to kind of echo some of the sentiment of the Tyrone West family, it's worthless if we're not talking about how we're going to change laws and policies and procedure, how police officers are engaging with community and making sure that civilians are involved in every aspect of policing. And if we're not changing the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights or other state and local laws to do so, then there's no way that the DOJ consent decree will have an impact on the Baltimore community. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? My name is Emma Anderson, and I am Tyrone West's aunt. And the thing about the DOJ report, there's nothing that they are going to do for us. There's nothing whatsoever the DOJ department is going to do for us, because they are saying from now, we're going forward. We're going to correct these things that have happened. We're going to try to make it better, do it better. But what about Tyrone West? What can you do about Tyrone West? Just leave him back there in the past and y'all go forward? My family cannot leave Tyrone in the past and y'all go forward. And just with Congressman Elijah Cummings, I'm not picking on anything, and I'm talking to anyone else in here with a title in front of their name that think that they can do something and don't do anything. What is wrong with everyone? What is wrong? Everyone knew about Tyrone West. August the 18th, 2013, everyone knew about Tyrone West. Everyone was scared. Everybody in their offices, underneath their beds, underneath their sheets, whispering about Tyrone West. We came out, his family came out, and ever since that happened to him, nothing. We have not changed one word about the story of Tyrone West. But I can tell you, you people out there with the titles in front of your name, all these cops have changed everything. But we have not changed one word, and every word we said was the truth. And I have been in the presence of these two officers that murdered my nephew. I can't even think. I was in the presence of them about a month ago, and their demeanor is just so powerful that they would think that they can do anything at all. And what I remember mostly about them, Congressman, in the court, when the attorneys were asking them questions, the police, the cops, I call them bad cops, not all cops, bad cops, the attorneys were asking them questions. And I really felt like puking up because their answers was, I don't remember, I don't recall. What kind of crap is that, Congressman? Can somebody or anybody here with a title in front of their name explain that to me? A cop that murdered someone, I don't remember, I don't recall. Beat someone up, I don't remember, I don't recall. That's crazy. And we cannot just go forward without rectifying what happened to Tyrone West.
All right, all right, all right.
I suppose I'll get it right. Good afternoon. My name is Walter Lomax. I represent the Maryland Restorative Justice Initiative. I want to start my presentation with what I would end it with, and that is the only way that we are going to arrive at some substantive change is we get rid of the Law Enforcement Office Bill of Rights. That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. The conditions that exist in the Baltimore City Police Department is very systemic, and they have been there for literally years. It is nothing new to those of us that are my age. What's new about it is that social media has made it more visible. If my child committed an act, of course, it would be my grandchildren or great-grandchildren now, I would be held responsible for them. And so there is no way that a line officer could commit the egregious acts that he commit, and his supervisors is not held accountable for that. There is no way that the citizens of Baltimore should be more afraid of the police department than they are of being robbed by somebody in the street. And so as an elder, reading this report was like reading a horror story. I couldn't, as a citizen of Baltimore City, not even imagine have to live under these type of conditions. And so I implore you, take some action, direct action. The dissent decree has just acknowledged something that we know that exists for many, many years. And so now it's time to take some direct action to do something about it. Thank you.
Sorry. I refuse to consent to a decree that does not include criminal prosecution of people who created the policies that allowed my cousin to be murdered in the street like an animal and nothing be done. I refuse to consent, and anyone in this room that consents to this, you're in agreement with what's already been done in this nation, which is absolutely nothing. This nation would not be burning if these consent decrees across the nation have been working. Baltimore can be different. Baltimore needs to be different. We cannot continue to do the same thing. We cannot continue to consent to our own murder, because that is essentially what we are doing. We are consenting to this system murdering our families, murdering our babies in the streets, and no one doing anything to prosecute any of these people. I have yet to see a consent decree that has put anyone in jail for the murder of these black people. Show me one. Show me one, and that's the one that I'll agree to. I do not agree to this consent decree, and anyone in this room that agrees to this, do you understand what you're giving away? Do you understand that they don't even need us to consent to still sign away our lives? Why do we continue to agree to this? This is a democracy. This is a democracy. Most of your majority enough. And anyone that continues to agree with this is part of what is wrong with this nation.
Greetings. My name is Greta Carter Willis. I am the mother of Kevin L. Cooper. My son was murdered on August the 12th of 2006. And I use the term murder because he was murdered by Officer Roderick Mitter of the Baltimore City Police Department. Officer Mitter was not fired, he was promoted. I have written from the top to the bottom to every congressperson and also with you, Senator Elijah Cummings, regarding my son's case. Martin O'Malley was our mayor at that time. No one wanted to touch his case. This officer came into our home, took my son's life. He was the judge, the jury, and the executioner of a 14-year-old child having an emotional breakdown. Where is the justice? This has been going on far too long. Yes, I thank the DOJ for coming in. Only thing you did was put the rubber stamp on top of the seal that we live daily in our communities, what's taking place in our communities. A mother that had to stand and witness my son's life being taken. I was offered $10,000 for what? I'm not taking blood money for my son's life. I want to see the officer prosecuted. They fought my attorney with Mr. Dwight Pellet with 3 attorneys and paid over $350,000 to do what? To sustain a lie, to substantiate a lie. So I thank you for coming in and bringing forth the light that we have been saying for a long time, that the department is corrupt, has been corrupt, it still is corrupt, need to be torn down from the top to the bottom. They need to take the commissioner, take them down, take and reinforce the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights to give you 10 days to do what? To substantiate a lie, to get your story straight so that you can come against an average citizen. I wasn't afforded that opportunity. I was removed from my home with my 10-month-old grandchild while my daughter was over Iraq serving her country, and her brother was being murdered on the streets of Baltimore by a Baltimore City police officer who is sworn in to protect and to serve. You are not sworn in to take the lives of our children. You're supposed to de-escalate, not escalate a situation. What do you think about me? Nobody's never knocked back on my door to say, "Mother, how are you doing?" Emotional breakdown, cry every day, been crying for the past 10 years. Still in my home. I don't have money to move. I have to stay in the home to see my son, to think about my son's body laying in my dining room. We need to make a change in this city. You need to get rid of these supervisors who are writing these reports, because I've never seen a report from Officer Mitter. The report came from the supervisor. I got a phone call to say that the officer will not be charged criminally. Anything I'm saying, check the records. Check the records. I've been fighting since 2006. Still standing on the front lines, still haven't given up. So I stand in solidarity with this mother. I stand in solidarity with any other family in Baltimore City whose child's life has been taken by Baltimore City Police Department and nothing has been done. We have to stop it. Drug test them. My son had to take his body. I couldn't even bury him because they wanted to drug test him. Nothing was in his system. If I'm working on my job and have an accident, I need to be drug tested. Why aren't the officers being drug tested? Why aren't they being psychologically challenged? 9:30 in the morning, why are you coming to somebody's home angry? Because there's a problem. And we know this is a broken system that needs to be fixed. Thank you.
My name is Abdul Salam, mental health executive and founder of Keys Development. We work with families, but at this time, speaking of being a victim and getting a chance to live a second life. My life was almost taken. I was almost murdered in my backyard by Baltimore City Police, Officer Nathan Ulmer, Bernardez Ruiz, and David Chapman, with my 3-year-old son at the time. And I must mention my 3-year-old son because we have to understand this is a psychological warfare just as much as it is a physical one. At no point in time did they take the welfare of my son in consideration. They terrorized my son just as much as they did me that day. This happened in front of 7-year-olds to 70-year-olds, my neighbors. Those were the individuals that saved my life. During the incident, they tried to intimidate my neighbors to leave the scene so that they could continue to do what they wanted to do. And what I mean by that is they slammed me several times, kicked me, punched me, handcuffed me, then dropped me on my head, hog-tied me, continued to beat me. This all happened 17 days prior to Tyrone West being beat. So what you're standing in front of is a microcosm of the DOJ report. We reported this to Internal Affairs, not only myself, but my neighbors. Internal Affairs report, they came to the hospital. They did nothing. When I followed up with Internal Affairs, they threatened me with a restraining order. How real did I think that this was? As real as the beating that I took. So I turned it over to my lawyers, scared to even ask for fairness. That's what we're dealing with. So as I end, I recognize a lot of faces here. We work in small pockets in Baltimore, and we're winning. Everybody here that's a part of this movement, we're winning. Understand that. We're not content until we're content. So let's keep pushing the needle. We're setting an example around the nation by having individuals uncomfortable. Individuals would have thought we were crazy 3-4 years ago. But they're waking up. We're winning. Thank you.
So I would just like to say that we're running short in time in this segment, so if people can shorten your comment to the shortest possible, so that way we can get everybody to speak and move on to the next part and then get people home because it is kind of getting late.
My name is John Mack. I'm a lifelong resident of Baltimore City, except for the time I spend on active duty. The first thing I'd like to say before I like to give my suggestion to the DOJ is we need to get the police department, the police spokesman, to stop speaking down to us when they get on the TV and say, I know somebody's seen something. I know one of y'all know, report. Until their own fellow officers tell on each other, you're not going to get nobody in the street to tell on nobody. I'm quite sure if you had 500 officers who illegally stopped and frisked people, it was at least 500 more with them. Because I lived in Baltimore all my life, I've never seen anybody stop, run through anybody's pockets when they by themselves. They're always with somebody else. So therefore, my first suggestion is you need to train them. They need to understand that the first thing is when they know it's a violation of another officer, they need to say something. They don't need to stop them on the street, they need to report it. Because if you report it internally, then therefore maybe they'll stop bringing it externally to the street. Second thing, I hear these people saying civilian review. That's an after the fact action. You need civilian monitors. You need people from the police department in which you put out there in cars, say, okay, you have the authority of the city to say, when I'm stopping on the street and I see officers out there, officer so-and-so and so-and-so car, they did this. Not internal affairs, but civilians. To make sure they monitor the officers once they come on the street. Because until they're trained and they come out and treat us with respect, you're not going to get no respect. Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody. My name is Riker Rocky McKenzie. I've been a long-time resident of Baltimore City, and I'm currently a member of the International Longshoremen's Association. What I want to address to you, sir, and the Legal Defense Fund is that there was a consent decree called the Judge Alexander Harvey III consent decree, which represented there would be no discrimination in regards to employment at the Port of Baltimore. We got 535 people who are comprised of the zip codes that's in this room right now today that are being denied employment opportunities. We currently are at the 4th Circuit Court in Virginia on appeal. You had a judge here. Her name is Kathleen Blake. She needs to be investigated. She did absolutely zero when it was brought to her to address the Harvey consent decree. So I'd appreciate it if you, after this meeting, could give me some contact information, you and the Legal Defense Fund, so we can get on top of this matter, because these people need jobs. The police department has targeted these individuals. Currently, they can't even get employment down there now because of their jail records. So that's denying them an opportunity, and the discrimination is worse now than it was 7, 8, 9, 10 decades ago. Thank you very much.
Greetings, family. My name is Derek Chase from Stand Up Baltimore. My comments will be brief. Right after the event, the uprising that happened with our brother Freddie Gray, we submitted a 24-point plan to the Baltimore Police Department. It's pretty thorough. We advised you or asked you to go, and it was submitted to their top brass, and they all had a meeting and they took a look at that. And I think that may be a direction that we can look to go in as it relates to this consent decree. But the real reason that I am here is we are, as a community, there's about 120 organizations represented in Stand Up Baltimore. On tomorrow evening, we will be compiling a document. That document is going to be billed as the community's response to the consent decree. We have a lot of input. We've been taking a lot of input from meetings like this, small meetings, people's homes. We're going to be bringing that information into a complete document. We have about 4 spaces. If there's anyone who would like to join us tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock, where you can come and participate in the development of that document. Everyone else, if you could just take out your cell phones for a second, write this email address down, and please submit us your ideas, because we want to include those ideas in the community's response. That email address is standupbaltimore, that's STANDUP Baltimore @gmail.com. You can place it to Derek Chase's attention, the community's response to the consent decree. We will be preparing a document, and we will be submitting that document on behalf of 120 organizations represented in Stand Up Baltimore.
So I wrote some notes down on here to say when I got up here tonight, and Aunt Diane crying like that just totally changed everything. So I want to just say, first, I think for the DOJ and for any elected political person in this city who keep on hearing black mothers cry like that over the deaths of their sons, over the deaths of their children, over the deaths of their fathers, and do nothing, you're a part of the problem. Every last one of you are part of the problem. I sit here and I listen to the DOJ. I've been to a few of the DOJ meetings, and I'm hoping that something comes out of the DOJ meetings, but what I'm hearing is them telling us what we tell them, and then it looks like nothing's going to happen. So we are now at a place where a consent decree is being negotiated, and the citizens aren't even at the table as that thing is being negotiated. It's the DOJ, and the last time I checked, the DOJ is a part of the system. It's the DOJ, it's the FOP, and it's our elected officials. And we, as citizens, are not there even defining our own course as we move along in this. You come and you ask us for months after month after month to give you information, and then you go speak on our behalf. We don't need you to speak on our behalf. We can speak for ourselves. So I think as a part of this consent decree, it should be declared that citizens are at the table when you're talking about us. And not that you're speaking for us. We don't need you to speak for us. We've had people in this system speak for us for centuries, and we're still getting killed.
So what I'm going to ask is that you actually add us to the table, put us at the table, and actually drive it by what citizens need, not by what politicians and the system needs, but by what citizens need. And so I want to be real clear that anything that comes out of this is nothing without citizens involved, and it dishonors us to be left out. The last thing I want to say is, if at the end of this we're still getting killed, it means nothing. It means nothing. So that Tyrone West got killed by these cops, by these rogue, murderous cops in Baltimore, nothing happened. That Freddie Gray got killed by the cops. Anthony Anderson got killed by cops. That people all over this country are getting killed by police officers. And then the DOJ comes in and offers us regurgitating what we've given them and not some real answers to how do you stop the police from killing us. Stop the police from killing us, and we will go away. Or you are colluding with the police killing us.
Okay, thank you. We're trying to squeeze about 4 more people in at 1 minute each. So, Rena, if you could just time folks at 1 minute each. We got 4 more minutes to get 4 people in. We're trying. You guys have done a great job so far. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brian Dolge, and I'm going to try and keep this really short. As has been said, we have to try and, change the culture of the police department. We have to have dialogue. We have to have all these other things. But that's years, and people are going to die every single year. People have died. Police have murdered people in this city every single year. And so we need to start, before we do anything else, with accountability. That means repeal the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights. If there's a Bill of Rights for me, there should be one for them. It's good enough. We need to have a majority of citizens on all police review boards. It needs to be mostly citizens, not mostly policemen. We need to have 100% of Baltimore police officers need to be wearing body cams 100% of the time, and that footage has to be available to anyone who appears in it within 48 hours of their request. They have 1 month to request it, and then they can get their footage so that they can go out in public with it and bring accountability to us that way.
My name is Kelly Holsey. My fiance name is Keith Davis Jr. He was shot at over 44 times by 4 officers, and then 16 false charges were put on him. Excuse my language, but all of this time we here tonight has been wasted. This report is bullshit. It is nothing but us telling you exactly what's going on. You have your pattern of practice. You know that they don't do what they're supposed to do. I don't give a damn about that slip either, because ain't no time on pain, miss. You don't live our lives, so you can't give me 30 seconds or a minute. That you know the things that they do. You sat here for weeks, but yet 3 officers, Ullman, Chapman, and Ruiz, killed Tyrone West 2 weeks before they damn near killed Abdul Salam. And you mean to tell me that both of those are victims in your report, but those officers are still on the force? But you got a consent decree? You want us to agree for them to have integrity? They didn't have integrity before this consent decree. All your consent decree is legal suggestions. Something I'm sure that when they started this job, they told them, hey, don't kill people. Don't illegal stop people. Don't lie in reports. Don't make false charges. And they did it anyway. So what you're telling us is that you're going to continue to come here. Where's the elected officials? Where's your mayor? Where are the people of the city? The collusion between all of these entities, you can't investigate one without the other ones. It was the state's attorney that made sure officers didn't talk in 10 days. Officers and my fiance, they didn't give statements for 8 months. They came to court and they lied, and they're still on the force. But he's behind bars. The police controlled the narrative here, and they let them. The police controlled the media's narrative, and they let them. So you think that you're going to come in town with some paper and tell them not to? Damn your consent decree. The only thing that you need to do is show action. And the only action that you can give is to start holding them accountable. And the only way to hold them accountable is to lock them up. Congressman Cummings, you've probably been in office since before I've gotten out of school. And I always believed that the one thing that I said, and when I was old enough to vote, I have always voted for you because I always see you within the people. Don't go back to Annapolis and forget these cries. Don't go back to Annapolis and forget us here, because I'm telling you that it is corrupt from the top to the bottom. And the Department of Justice, in order for us to really get some things done, go back to the drawing board, investigate the state's attorney's office, investigate city council. It is a perpetual cycle that you all can stop. You lock them up, they won't be able to put false charges. These men won't be able to take deals because they want to just get out of jail. They won't be disabled. Keith will forever have to have disability. He has just as much metal in his face than he does bone on this side. He's sitting in jail with a bullet in his neck. Just last week he passed out. You want to know why? Because lead is seeping into his bloodstream and poisoning him. He still got a cop's bullet in his neck, and they're still on the street. Don't tell me that we're here to help. Don't ask me for my suggestions, because you damn sure not going to listen to them. The only way you can do something is to show and prove. The only way to do that is to hold them accountable. The only way to hold them accountable, to stop growing these lists of families, to stop these mothers' cries, to stop the pain that I go through every day. I'm coming here from work, I'm working my ass off to pay lawyers to get him out of jail because he's proven that he's innocent and he stood up and he fought against them. So you know what, we didn't bury Keith, but they're trying to systematically kill him. Hold them accountable. So go back, go from the drawing board. Don't call us, because we here tonight giving y'all our big fats I told you so's. Go back and hold all of these entities accountable, because you cannot do it just with the police. Because these lies that they tell, all of these other entities collude together, and that's how our black men are caught up in this system. That's how our black men aren't able to work. That's how they're dying. They're being wounded fatally, changed for the rest of their lives. I was on the phone, I heard the gunshots. I heard him begging and pleading. They're trying to kill me. And when I got to the hospital, they said, he's a healthy man, he fought, so he's okay. But the rest of his life is changed. For what? Because you made a mistake? And instead of saying, we made a mistake, you took and you lied and you put charges. And because he stood up and fought against you, you now try to come back and spin the narrative again, and all of these cameras here, they're going to take out chunks and bits and pieces to what works for them. They're not going to tell the truth. You're not going to see the truth. Because the police control the city, they control the narrative, and they're going to shake your hands, and they're going to sign your consent decree, and by the time you're moving vans out here with your boxes from your offices, they're going to send you a big, it's our city again. And they're going to do what they want to do. The commissioner in this city stood on a camera and lied to my fiance. He's the top cop. He's the one that sets the bar, the example. The mayor said, come on in and investigate. She should be at every one of these town hall meetings. That should be your insight there. Warren Branch is the only elected official for the city here. Where are the rest of them? Because they don't care, because they know nothing's going to change. I don't even know who that is. What I'm saying is, lock them up. State legislators, whoever, nothing's changing. So you can come here all you want to. All you did was waste the drive. All you did was get stuck in traffic to get into the city, and you got a long ride back home. Because nothing's going to be done until you lock them up. And they break the laws, put them in jail. That's right. They lie, put them in jail. Stop giving them a cloak of invincibility. Because when we see them in court, that's what they give us. They smirk and they smile. I sat in court with them. They smirked and smiled as this family cried. I sat in court with my fiance. They rocked the bench and laughed and called me all types of names and picked with me too. One even threw something at us. You know why? Because they know they do what they want. This report drew a line in the sand. It's a us versus them. So all you did was give us a piece of paper, and we're going to take it into our own hands because we're not agreeing to anything. We're not working with them. We're not doing that. Because you know what? You're going to be right back here again. That consent decree, like she said, is just another way for more brothers to be killed, more men to be lied on, more charges to be had. You want to do something, hold them accountable. You want to hold them accountable, lock them up.
All right, so they asked me to be quick, so I'm going to be quick, right? So what she talked about is what to do after the fact. They need to get locked up. That's a fact. They need to get locked up. They need to be held accountable. But we also need to talk about what we're going to do beforehand. We can't let it get to that moment. So what I think, one, training should be longer, and two, they should have mandatory community service all throughout while they're doing training. And they should have a supervisor watching them, because when you're doing community service and you're active, when you're watching someone do community service and interact with the community, you can tell a psychopath. You can tell that one cop who's only doing it for power. Okay, so what you need to do is make sure that they're watching and see, all right, is he doing it for the right reason? Because we talk about protect and serve, we focus on the protect and we forget about the serve.
Okay, so mine's going to be really quick. I work with an intensive advocacy unit with Baltimore youth. I have a couple of things. One, crisis prevention intervention training is trained to a lot of professionals, especially medical professionals. There are ways to restrain individuals without harming or hurting them and without suffocating them. Secondly, I would like to say that at the same point in time, we need to be listening to our youth in terms of school policing. We sat in on a panel with a bunch of youth. They have great input to give. And we also need to challenge our commissioner to ask the question, why are youth getting arrested when they're protesting? Not just what are they doing and why are they jeopardizing the future, but why is that important to them? That's an important question. And then lastly, I'd like to say community resources. When a professional is called in, a police officer, for a mental health crisis, that's a crisis. Crisis is different than criminalizing someone. So we need to come up with ways that when the situation goes wrong, we're not just putting handcuffs on our children when they're having mental breakdowns. Instead, we need to call in referrals for community resources that can actually help that child get medical help.
All right. This is going to be our final comment at 1 minute. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Travis Robertson. I'm a proud progressive law student. You can't train white racist killer cops to be nice to people. That's something their mother should have taught them when they was little. You can't spend money on what somebody should already know how to do. Indict, convict, send those killer cops to jail. You, the DOJ, has declared the BCPD, the Baltimore City Police Department, guilty as hell. Baltimore City Police Officer 568, I had an encounter with him. He's a corrupt, white, racist cop, and he needs to be investigated. Also, Title 18 of the U.S. Code 241242 says that police officers cannot deprive people of their constitutional rights. In the DOJ report, y'all said they violated constitutional rights, so y'all need to bring forth charges and do your job.
Very important.
Okay.
Okay.
I totally agree.
61 days before the election. This is very important.
Thank you so much.
I absolutely agree. We are. Okay.
That's 30 seconds
Hold on.
right there.
I agree. However, I've been told that we have to wrap things up. And I think it's very important.
Okay.
I don't think this is a final. I don't think this is the end.
Okay, thank you very
but
much.
we actually have to go ahead and wrap things up.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're telling me. Okay.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you
I'm
very
sorry.
much.
We can move forward. I thought I was being told to wrap
Okay,
up.
God
So
bless
let's go
you.
ahead and move forward.
Okay. Praise the Lord, everybody. Okay, my name is Charlene McCormick. People call me Katiba Charlene. But I have a campaigning for a U.S. Federal Bureau of African American Affairs, like the Indians have. If it worked for them, it could work for us. And not only for the African American, but also for the European American as well need a bureau, so that we can have somebody up on a national level to monitor what's going on individually in our communities. Now, I would like to comment on what we're here for today. Our concerns are bigger than police reform. Police is just a branch of the problem. We need government reform. I'm not for or against the police, but something needs to be done about African Americans dying in the street is 9 times higher than any other ethnic group in America. And I have the statistics here to prove it. Our police job is to protect the general population from hurt and harm and to help keep the peace. Their job is not to figure out the people's frustration. Police can only react. A crime must be committed or about to be committed before they could do something about it. It seems every time crime goes up and the people's frustrations get out of hand for them, our peers put the responsibility on the police department and then fire the commissioner. We had like 4 or 5 commissioners fired in the last 5 years or so. So I'm gonna make it short. I'm gonna go on. We need to clean up our public airways. We have to do something about peer pressure. Our community leaders put the residents and the police in jeopardy. Our peers are the root of the police department and community's problems. They do what they want with our public revenues and public airways. They give our public revenues and public airways to private corporations and outsiders for return on investments through partnerships. It's been going on for so long in this country, they think it's all right. Public revenues and the public airways are for the public service only. It should not shrink in size or delivery, and most of the good leaders stay away and keep quiet. If the general, okay, I'm almost finished. Again, I'm gonna cut it short. Again, I'm campaigning for U.S. Federal Bureau of African American Affairs. Government is the problem, is the root of the problem. When they started legalized slavery, they started legalized slavery, and we're still suffering from it now. That's why we need a Bureau of African American Affairs, so this stuff could stop. Our forefathers made a mistake. Okay, let's straighten it up and move on.
My name is Gregory Brown, and I want to say it's good to have this thing, but part of me don't know. I'm just like somebody said earlier that Baltimore lost its faith in the police and the political party, including the congressman. And if you want to get my belief back, then I need to see some consistency. I need to see consistency. And I heard you talk about it earlier, excess force. I want to take it a little higher and talk about deadly force. Deadly force, the amount of force an officer is allowed to use to cause grievous and bodily harm and even death. And it's only used as a last resort with emphasis on the word only. So that tells me that officers, it's procedures for an officer to follow before he get to deadly force. Something need to be done about these officers going straight to deadly force. And also what I would like to see done is this little scapegoat motto that the police have to give, and some of it's probably legit, but some of it is the CYA, cover the ass. When an officer says, I was in fear for my life and I thought he had a gun, that gets them to do some illegal stuff and use that way, them 2 statements as a cop-out. Something need to be done about that. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bill Bleich. I'm a teacher with the Baltimore City Public Schools. And the sponsor of tonight's town hall, Representative Elijah Cummings, and I have something in common. When he spoke 2 or 3 years ago at the Poly graduation, he told a story, you may remember, about when you went off to college, your father told you, you're going there to learn and don't get involved in any protests. Remember the story? Okay. I guess I remember it a little bit differently. Okay. At any rate, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I've been involved with the West family and the demonstrations that they hold each week, known as West Wednesday. And it's been a very important struggle going on for 3 years now, and I'd like to invite everyone to participate. It's 6:30 every Wednesday, and each week it's at a different location. The family tells me where it's going to be. I'm the one that sends out an email. So at the conclusion tonight, if you'd like to sign up and be on that email list, I'd be happy to put you on there. I want to talk about an illusion. Illusions are very hard to give up. Many of us had a difficult time when we found out Santa Claus was not quite as real as we thought he was. And the illusion I want to talk about tonight is that the Department of Justice came here to solve our problem. That's an illusion. In the 1990s, the Clintons passed the crime bill that made 3 strikes and you're out the law. And what organization was responsible for the ramp up in mass incarceration as a result of that law? The Department of Justice. They're the ones. Now, in the past, if you read the DOJ report, the last 5 pages have nothing to do with Baltimore. The last 5 pages are all about community policing as a solution to this problem. But if you read about the history of so-called community policing, what you find is that police department after police department adopts the symbolism and the language, but they carry on as they had always done. Scholars call that strategic buffering. In other words, the point of those adoptions of community policing as a so-called strategy is to fool us into thinking that things are going to change. That's the nature of this report. In Baltimore, prior to Freddie Gray's murder, for the 30 years before that, there were 5 police officers indicted for brutality over that entire 30-year span, in spite of hundreds and hundreds of cases of murder and brutality by the police. One of them was found guilty. He spent a short time in jail and won on appeal. And as we know, none of those cops that were indicted for the death of Freddie Gray are spending any time. As the West family and others have pointed out tonight, the DOJ here is trying to put a pretty face with this consent decree on an ugly reality. What we need is to put killer cops in cell blocks.
Good evening. My name is Anthony White. I'm an educator here in Baltimore City. I've got so much to say, but I've only got 2 minutes to say it because we have the timekeeper right here. Really, there's been so much said. I was going to start off on one thing, but I want to talk. We talked about decoding Maryland statutes. We talked about the emotions of the mothers of West and Cooper. But how do we find solutions? There's a few things I thought about as I was sitting in line because I work that way. I'm abstract, right? So civic engagement is really important. A lot of that's not in our school systems anymore. So when young folks, when they want to know about how to get involved, they need to know that it starts with civic engagement. That's the first thing. So if we're not teaching them this in the school, then they're not going to understand that the police are not there to serve them, but they're just there to protect the community. They're not. Number 2, that if you are a police officer, you need to be a part of that community in which you are supposed to protect and serve. It needs to be a requirement. We have the 2016-2017 Baltimore operating budget, $2.64 billion, nearly 33% of that goes to safer streets or the police department. Some of that money needs to be funneled down into the education system so that we can enlighten our young folks about how important it is to protect and serve your community. All that being said, I could say a lot of other things, but I'm going to leave you with this poem I wrote 10 years ago, right? So it goes like this. It's called Black in America. And anyone who's been disenfranchised, who's not been considered, can relate to this. It says, nobody really knows the troubles and woes deep inside of our heads. Don't know how to work them out. Too long been trying to talk them out. When will relief come to detach these bars off of our melanin skin? No time. I mean, no time is too soon to break the cycle that we are in. Thank you.
So I want to say thanks to everyone that came out. And then I want like 10 seconds just because I was facilitating don't mean I'm not a citizen of Baltimore City. And anybody who knows me from any of the organizations should have known this was coming. So I want to say that my suggestion for solutions to the DOJ is that none of these reforms and band-aids that are going to happen should give more money to the Baltimore City Police Department. You do not give murderers money for killing people. That's not okay, right? Like you don't like if you have cancer, you don't put a band-aid on top of the cancer, you cut it out. So we need to cut out the corruption of the Baltimore City Police Department, shut the whole thing down, start over. Point blank, period. I'm done. I'm not taking up any more time. I think I saw Monique coming over this way. Oh, our MC, I'm sorry.
Well, thank you guys for coming, first of all. Thank you for being honest. Thank you for sharing your feelings. Thank you for giving us those suggestions. Everything that we've talked about has been very heavy. And I know that traditionally when something like this happens, music helps. And so we went out and we got a Baltimore member, a Baltimore City resident. He is a student at Morgan State. His name is Cameron Potts. He's going to come up here, and you hear the applause because he's brilliant. He does good work. And so I will introduce Cameron Potts, who will come up here and sing 2 songs, and then we will wrap up and talk about next steps. So please welcome Cameron Potts.
Good evening, everyone. How's everybody feeling? Amidst